Ooh, is that a tune? Hey, it's Will from EDMtips. Today I'm going to show you how to make house music in the style of ARTBAT. I'm only going to be using the stock plugins from Ableton Live 10 for this, so you can download the project below. But if you don't use Ableton, don't worry, because these methods can be applied in any DAW. We will be covering the kick and the bass and the percussion and the synths, creating that lovely warm organic sound that ARTBAT is famous for, and we will even go into a bit of vocals, arrangement and mixing too. ARTBAT are a duo from Kiev in Ukraine. I actually know a Ukrainian because my wife's one. She doesn't make as good music as them, but she is a lot prettier. Sorry lads. Anyway, if you dig this video, give it a big fat thumbs up, share it, subscribe to my channel if you want tutorials like this each and every week, and without further ado, let's hop into the DAW and get it done. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is set the tempo. 1, 2, 3 is a very good tempo for this kind of music. Again, you can check other music in the same genre to get guidance on that. Next thing, I'm going to name it House About Bat Then. House About Bat Then. That's what we're calling it. Deal with it. Next, we are going to move on to the kicks. Now, as I said before, this genre is very kind of organic and lovely and warm sounding, so we're going to be adding saturation and stuff like that to the kicks. So first, let's just load in a nice chunky kick, and I'm going to make sure that I've got sustain and release set so that when my MIDI images stop drawing in like this, the kick actually stops right there. And this is to make sure that we don't have the kick running on longer than it needs to, so we get a lovely clean mix. We can choose one voice if we like, because we don't need the kicks overlapping, but probably don't need to. Now I'm going to add some of that saturation I was talking about to give it a slightly distorted sound. And I might take the output down to stop it clipping. Just slightly distorted. And now a bit of EQ to shape that slightly. So obviously we want all the low end in there. I want less of the tick though. So I'll just use a high shelf. And I might push up the fundamental frequency. Not the fundamental, but 1 octave above the fundamental. Because the fundamental here looks like it's, because you can see from the big peak, it's 44. So double that, it's going to be about 90. And this is just to make it a bit chunkier. Taking the Q a bit. So this is with all of our kick processing off. And this is with it on. So slightly distorted, slightly warm. Okay, on to the next thing. We are going into the bass straight away. Boom, lovely jubbly. So we will get bass. Now this is going to be split into two, the top bass and the sub bass. But first let's just start getting a rhythm kind of zoned in. I'm going to use the analog synth. I would usually use Silent one for this because that's a nice analog sounding synth, but I'm going to use this because I'm just using Ableton plugins. And I'm just going to tap a melody in and record it as I go. A rhythm, I mean. Lovely. And I'm going to just tidy that up a bit. Select it all and quantize it. Tweak it around a bit. That sounds cool. I'm going to just put that up in volume and then take it down here. In fact, I'm going to put my kick to -6 just so I've got lots of room on the master channel with no clipping, lots of headroom. That's a very uninspiring top bass sound, but bear with me. We're going to make it a bit richer and a bit nicer. So where's that routing thing? You get this routing. Let's see. Here we go. I'm going to route it so each of these oscillators are going to their own filter and their own envelope, and I'm going to tweak them. In fact, for the top bass, I want it lovely and open like that. And what I'm going to be tweaking is the tune. And then I'm going to pan one left and pan one right. And check it in mono, using my mono checker here. Whoops. Which is assigned to a keyboard shortcut. Whoops, I'll turn those things off. That's the mastering chain. And I'm going to take out the low end of this top bass. And I'm going to make it nice and crunchy, so I'll use a saturator. Right, now let's make this into the sub bass too. So I'm just going to consolidate it. I'm going to create a new channel for bass, sub bass, like so. And I'm going to just copy that exact same pattern down, call it sub bass. And then we are going to make a nice, rich, deep bass sound for that in mono, because we don't want the sub bass in stereo, because we can run into phase issues. I'll just use the operator to do this. The good old operator. Let's use that sub bass. Already beef. Just tweak the ADSR. Add some release to stop the clicking. I'm going to choose one voice because we don't want overlapping sub bass. No, thank you very much. So you can hear the percussive elements of that. I'm going to add a bit of saturation, again, warm it up a bit. Just add some harmonics. I might add another oscillator 1 octave above it. Cool. And now I'm going to take out some of those high frequencies so it gels in with our top bass, which isn't really a bass at all, is it? It sounds like it's just a synth, but I'll show you what I'm going to do with it. So with this top bass, I might actually add an amp plug-in just to give it even more crunch. Right, now let's add some nice effect to that top bass. So we'll call this, just call it bass effect. Oh, come on. Color it yellow because it's for my bass. Lovely. And then let's just add some kind of, I'm going to make a special super duper multi-tap delay actually. So this is something that you might not have seen before. First get a normal delay sound that I want. Whoops. Ping pong. So you can hear. Just take out some of the low end. If we put another delay unit, just group that together, duplicate it, turn the initial one off, and then choose a different delay. And then, in fact, this one I'm going to tweak slightly to make it a little bit out of phase. Again, to add more warmth and analogness. And then, yeah, something similar for this. I'll do it the other way and then choose a And then with this one, we can add something like a flanger, just to add more character to it. So together, we can just take that down a bit. Just to add some more flavor. And then with this bass, what we're going to do is we are going to use the ADSR controls for the amplitude. And we're going to tweak the sustain and the decay, and we're actually going to be automating this as well, which would be cool. With the sub bass. Okay, I'm going to bus the basses together. Just going to group that into a bass bus. And that is so we have got a bit more control. We can easily just turn the bass down because it's getting a bit loud and we're going to end up with no headroom on the master channel. So I'm going to turn the kick down to -8 actually and just bring the bass up. Now I'm going to add some sidechain compression to that bass. So I'm just going to trigger it from my sidechain channel, which is here. And all that is a rim shot sound. And if we look at the routing, it's sent to sends only. So you never actually hear that rim shot. It's just used to control that sidechain compression. So let's just feed some of that to give it some bounce. So this is off and this is on, and it just allows the kick more space to breathe through. Okay, on to the next thing. We've got the drums to do. So let's get some on the go. I'm going to use the drum rack so I can feed in some reverb, which I've right-clicked, create return chain, and just assigned that to my global reverb channels here. So I can feed a little bit into each drum if necessary. So let's go to my samples. Let's put some hats in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 hats in. And I'm going to make them get triggered by the same thing, same drum, so that both of them play at the same time, just with one drum press, which you can't hear. So, and I'm going to pan one left and one right. They're a bit loud actually, so I'll turn them down -6 each. Pan one left, pan one right. And still a bit loud. I'll turn the drum bus down -6 too. Filter out some of the low end, because we only want that crisp highness for these hats. And I've changed it to mono so I can more easily work out the levels. So in stereo. And I can add some of this reverb now, my room reverb. That amp might be giving it too much crunch. Yeah. Next drum, Let's get a clap in there. So just a really short clap, kind of techno-y. Well, it's not a techno-y clap at the moment. It's got that pre-transient sound. So I'm going to just take that off and make it a much shorter, snappier sound. So it's just playing this part of the sample rather than that too. Okay. Let's copy and paste that, duplicate it. I'm just tuning that to the tune. I don't like that amp, it's too harsh. Okay, next thing is to add some 16th hats, I think. Probably something like that on the 16ths. So I'll zoom in a bit and then just copy and paste it all the way, baby. And then that is... Turn it down, pan it slightly, give it some room reverb. Maybe change the velocity a bit to give it some groove. Yeah, so I've just tweaked the velocity a bit there on a couple of them to humanize it slightly. Make it less... That's a technical term, by the way. Now let's add some more interest. Oh, look. No. So we've got these two, and the same with the closed hats. I'm going to assign these to the same receive thingy here. So when one plays, the other will play. And again, I'm going to pan one left and one right. And this is just to add a bit more groove. A bit harsh, so I'm going to add some attack. Wait, after I've changed it to one voice. So it's a bit of a softer sound. So it's just about the texture as much as anything else. I might tune this one because it's got a bit of a tone to it. So it's in tune with the rest of the tune. Okay, on to the next thing. We have got, oh, classic snare intro. Well, we can do that in a bit, but I'm going to do it now. So let's just call it snare, and then sampler will do, or a simpler. Get the snare sound. And then it's going to be a simple case of a classic house snare intro. Snare intro. Okay, now just going to program them in again on sixteenths. And I'm going to adjust the velocity to make it obviously get louder the further along you go. So what you can do for that is you can select them all, Command and A, hold Command, and then in this velocity section here, just click and drag, and you can see you can actually drag a contour. Oh, I missed that first one. I'll turn that down because it's quite loud. And now check it out. So that is our snare intro. But what we're going to do is we're going to start the track off and we are going to just have like a high kick. So the way I'm going to do that, I'll shut these down because I've already done that. And then I'm just going to cut out the low end at the beginning of the kick. So it's like more like this when the track starts. Well, I'll turn off the bass too. So this is, in fact, we may as well do a bit of arrangement now. So we'll move that there. We'll just copy and paste this. We'll take those away. Take those away. And this will kind of be the drop when the bass and everything comes in fully. And we're going to automate this bass as well. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to stick a utility plugin on the sub bass because we don't really want that coming in fully until the drop. So let's just take it down a bit. And I'm not using the channel faders to automate because if I need to change the volume at any point, I'm stuffed because I've already got nodes and automation programmed in. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do some cray effect on the top bass. We're going to go auto filter, high pass. Now check it out. Right, first we need to get rid of that kick. So show automation off there. So we're going to introduce the bass like this. Automation. Like so. Yeah, so we can take the drums out at the beginning. In fact, no, we'll just keep simple drums in. We'll take the hi-hats, the 16ths out. Something else we can do with this bass is just add some reverb as well as it's kind of coming in. So we can then take it out again to make the drop even harder. So like this. And then absolutely whack, no reverb on at all on the drop. Kind of a bit like that, except we're not going to have the 16ths come in yet. That claps, I'm not liking it that much. That's a bit better. Okay, on to the next thing. Boom. We are going to add a couple of effects as well on that little build. And don't worry, we're going to get to the melodic stuff very, very soon. But this initial groove is super important for this kind of melodic house style. And this organic, it's almost like progressive house, kind of touching on techno in some ways. So I'm just going to add a couple of really organic, analog sounding, you know, not really high quality, just a bit gritty, really. I'm going to feed in some of the Hall reverb, which is just a long reverb on the auxiliary channel. Let's see how that sounds. So you can hear it fading off there. And then on, let's get another effect in there. We can play this one on the drop. Make sure we get rid of some of those low frequencies with an EQ. It's really the white noise frequencies we want here. So make sure they don't fight with the bass. Then on the drop, it's a bit like, whoops, a bit like this. I added some Hall room reverb there as well. Okay, one more effect and then we are good to get on to the next thing. So I've got this weird, like really harsh beaming blare nastiness. Oof. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just reverse that so it kind of fades in, and that's going to happen on the build as well. So it's a bit like this, just quietly, just to add a little bit of low energy. Probably add some bloomin saturation to the drums as well. Okay, that's kind of the main groove that we've got going on. So now I'm going to add some, oh yeah, like da-da-da-dum. What's that tune that this is kind of based on? I think it's by Sono or something like that, and it's their remix of it. But I'm going to layer up this kind of double bass sound. So let's do that. And it's going to be really wide and just whack you in the face like an absolute bad boy. So let me know what you think so far, guys. Give me a hell yeah or an amen, brother, in the comments below, because I love to get them's comments. And without further ado, let's continue. So first I am going to select a sampler. This is going to be a layered bass because we want it quite rich, and there's lots of sound that we want in this. So I've got this bass sample, which I've just, you know, it's not a great sample, but it kind of hits the frequencies that I want to a degree. You know, it's really cheesy sounding, almost like a bass guitar. So I'm going to just tweak the sustain so it's more of a pluck. And that gives it a really nice attack. So that's the main reason I want this sound. So let's call this big bass, pluck. And this tune is in G minor natural, so we're going to hit the G on there. And I'm going to hold shift and press down a couple of times. So So you can hear it's got a nice punchy texture to it. So I'm just going to color that yellow because that's my base color. Color my effects bright green because they're my effects colors. Always good to be organized. They always told me that at school, but my God, did I not listen. But now I realize the virtue of what they were trying to say. If only I'd listened. Right, next bass. I'm just duplicating the same pattern and we're going to get a bit of a synth on the go here. So I'm going to use analog, again, very simple. And just, let's have a listen. Right, okay, we need loads of those low frequencies out, so. So it needs to be 5, maybe it should be 5. Yeah, I like that. So with this one, I'm going to see if it needs to be on a different octave. So I'm going to add a 7th to it to give it more harmonics. I'll take it down an octave too. Maybe make one a square. That's sounding quite good now. I'm going to add some hall reverb to it. I know, a bit naughty for bass, but I'll show you what we're going for. And remember, we've already rolled out the low end in our reverb for the auxiliary channel, so we should be okay. And we're going to add one more bass sound. I'm going to duplicate this big bass and it's going to be another synth, but instead of analog, I want something with even more harmonics. So I'm going to go for the wavetable, which is kind of like the equivalent to Serum. So let's just have a look here. Let's have a little listen. I'll take off the reverb there for the time being. So I'll have a listen to some of these. Now, oh, that's pretty much there. Almost. I'm going to add some saturation to that. And what I'm also going to do is add some, kind of like, it's not a saturator, it's a bit reducer, but it can add some harmonics to it and it sounds pretty cool. I'll put that after the saturator so you can really hear what it does. So you can hear it's adding some harmonics to it. And we're going to add some reverb to this. It's a bit high actually, so what I'm going to do is add a different reverb to it with fewer high frequencies. High cut. Now it's too naughty, I should do that on an auxiliary channel. So I'm going to leave that off at the moment and just group these basses together so we can have more control over it. And let's listen to it. No. big bass pluck. I'm going to make this really wide by using a stereo imager. This is just on the pluck sound. And it's not playing my harmony that I just programmed in, so I need to change it and make sure I've got 2 voices selected. So it's a nice big bass. We're going to put an EQ on the end of the on the group to make sure it's not clashing with the actual sub bass. It's more the impression of bass that we want from this. Cool. So let's hear what it sounds like with the rest of the track in play. I'm going to have to create a specific, I think, bass reverb for that, because if it's using the same hall reverb as the effects, like the sweeps, I want the high ends in that reverb. So I'm just going to copy all of this, actually, paste it, and then just filter out some of the high frequencies for the bass. So if we go to my big bass sound, take off all the reverb that we had put on before. Put it over the whole group, actually. That's cool. And now let's filter out some of those high frequencies. Add some decay time. Murky. And we could even add a tiny bit of saturation over the whole group, just to gel them together a bit. Okay, now we're grooving. So I'm going to do an arpeggio next. Oh, I've got a few more little treats to show you. But yeah, we're doing arpeggio next. Cool, so those things are done for now. I don't want to duplicate that. Thank you very much. Okay, ARP. Again, I'm going to use the wavetable for this just because it's got lovely rich sounds to it. And you can open it up and edit it much like you would in Serum, which is pretty cool. Okay. So I know what key it's in because the bass note's G, and it's got, I want it to be a minor tune because it's kind of like a techno type tune almost. So I know what I'm going to play with the arpeggio. I'll start on a G. So good news, I've got my next masterclass opening up next week, so you can check the link below for that. Basically, you learn how to produce music with weekly homework, you get feedback, we jump on calls. It's really, really good. Some of my students have become full-time music producers after taking it and have like hit #2 in the Beatport charts amongst loads of other cool stuff. So do check that out if you want to really improve your game within the next 8 weeks. And then play a minor chord. And then add the 7th because I love 7ths. Now, I'm not actually using a reference track to do this, so You know, it might be kind of off that ARTBAT sound, but it doesn't really matter because I don't care. But it's the point is that you're learning techniques, and the way I'm thinking about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So let's see what we can come up with there. In fact, no, that's too complex. Let's just use an analog because we want a nice simple sound to it. We're going to again use 2 oscillators. I'm using this quick routing thing just to send one oscillator 1 to filter 1 to amp 1 and oscillator 2 to filter 2 to amp 2. So then we can process them independently of each other. So first thing I'm going to do is choose voice mono and then add some glide. So yeah, it's got portamento basically. And then detune, maybe choose a different saw wave, a different synth oscillator wave. So I've got 1 saw and 1 square. There's some popping there. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Maybe the amplitude in the second oscillator. So I can attack. Sorry, I can add a bit more attack to smooth out the sound a bit. Nice. Next thing I'm going to do is just EQ out a lot of that low end. And then I'm going to add some, let's see what's on my list. Add some, this is something I barely ever use, but it's a pretty cool plugin for adding a little bit more grit. So I'm going to add this corpus thing. In fact, I'll do it before the EQ so it filters out any of the other frequencies. I add some pretty mental effects. Right, so I'm going to choose, well, I'll just kind of go through some of these presets. I'll turn it down a bit though, because it does make it quite loud. That's cool. And now we're going to add some reverb to this and something magic. I'm going to add 1 more auxiliary channel. So that's Command, Alt and T. And I'm going to add, let's call it magic. And I'm going to add a grain delay on there just to add some extra richness to it. Because again, we're going for that analog sound. So if we go to, okay, it's not in my collections, because I don't often use it. Grain delay. And then we're going to feed some of that up in there. So this is without it, and this is with it. I'm going to make sure I EQ out the low end in the auxiliary channel so it doesn't muddy up my mix. Add some hall reverb and some room reverb. Well, let's see which sounds better. Nice. Maybe it needs to go down a bit. No, it'll clash with the bass. Maybe take down some of the frequencies. I like that. And then we can add an auto filter on there so we can control it. And I think a bit of delay. I'm actually going to feed it to the bass effects and see how that sounds, the bass delay. Ah, Prider. That's just a tune right there. Way too loud though. It's supposed to be back in the mix. It's supposed to be just airy and in the back of the mix. Cool. Okay, let's add a pad now to add even more depth to it. So call that pad, color it paddy color, and then we are going to just hold a 7th chord, or even just a minor chord maybe. Again, we're going to use the wavetable, a nice rich soundiness, and then I'm going to show you some pretty cool tips in terms of processing for this. So let's just have a look. Pads. Again, it's a matter of just like checking out which ones sound good. I quite like that one. Although it dies off a bit there. Maybe I'll just up the frequency. Nice. Again, just a simple G minor triad. You know, melodically, this is very simple. It's all about the groove, all about the atmosphere. So let's get some of that processing that I just mentioned. Now, what I want to do in this is add a phaser. Now, I wrote down some ideas about what I could do. Yeah, okay, so basically a phaser and an EQ is what I've got down here. So let's try. Try this different one. Yeah, that's even softer. I like that. So let's add a phaser. Just to add some more depth and richness to it. Adjust the rate of LFO. And then just EQ out some of the low frequencies that are going to clash with everything. So with that arpeggiator, I'm actually going to add an auto pan as well at the earlier on in the chain, just to get some movement. So it pans left and right. Add some hall reverb to the pad. So you could then have a break, for instance. First, I'm going to give you an example of what a vocal might look like and how you would find it. So if you were to go on Splice or Loop Cloud, you would just, knowing the track is in G minor, you could just then search for a vocal in G minor, like so. That's not big enough, no way. Like, this becomes apparent when you play it back, you're like, oh, that doesn't sound right. That needs some kind of sub bass in there. So what I'm going to do is simply copy this sub bass instrument, like so. I won't bother with all the other processing. I'm going to duplicate that big bass, but replace it with that sub bass instrument. And then I'm going to check it. Okay, it's being affected by this saturator and the fact that I've got this EQ. I think that's taking out too much low end information. So this is without the sub bass. Okay, it was just the EQ on the group, so I've taken that's better already. So let's add that bass EQ back. Sorry, bass reverb back on D. A, B, C, D. Now let's try and play again. And then, of course, you could have the ARP coming in, like so. This isn't how it would start off the track, but you could use this later on. Cool. So if you were to have the break in that tune that this is clearly referencing, that I can't remember the name of, by ARTBAT, then you could have that bass change note in the tune. Like so. Something like this probably. I don't know what the actual notes are because I'm not listening to the tune, but as long as it's in G minor, you should be all good. Let's see if. Which it's not. That note isn't in G minor, so I'm going to put it up instead of down. And then, you know, get some vocals in there, as I said. So let's go to splice. Just go vocals, G minor. Probably male. That's cool. yeah, so let's just add that in. I know it's not, you know, technically ARTBAT style, but it sounds pretty cool. So let's open up Splice again. Wrong thing. And then we are going to just drag it in. Where was it? Which one was it? I think it was this one. Yeah. So just going to download it. Recently added. Drag it in. We'll see what tempo it is because it tells you it's 140. So just make sure to rewarp it 140. Complex Pro. Let's have a listen. And you can adjust where it starts, of course. Add some hall reverb. Nah, it sounds better, just one. Otherwise it's too much. Take some of those harsh frequencies out. Whoops. Looks like it's about there. Nice. And then you could bring the, you know, the bass in a similar build up as before. Nah, you do the... Cool, so you get the idea anyway. I'm going to do a bit more work on this before I stick it in the download for you to download. But yeah, pick it apart if you like. Don't forget my masterclass, my new masterclass is launching again very soon. So do check out the link below if you want tuition and stuff like that. And I will catch you soon. Thanks again for watching. Thanks for sharing and subscribing. And until next time, cheers and happy producing. So there you have it, guys. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to download the project file and all the samples for free. Give it a big fat thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and until next time, cheers and happy producing.